The first race of the 2024 F1 season has come to an end, with Max Verstappen taking the win at the Bahrain Grand Prix. But there's plenty more to talk about, so don't go away. Yuki Tsunoda has a meltdown after the race. Ferrari's Charles Leclerc has issues, but Carlos Sainz, he pushed forward and got a podium finish. And Mercedes, they struggled throughout the whole thing. All coming up in this episode right now.
If he continues this way, he's going to be one of the greats.
Today he saw something amazing.
This is Formula One. This is the sport we love.
Welcome everybody to F1 Briefings in proud partnership with Sports Illustrated. The Bahrain Grand Prix has been and gone. We're back in the season, baby. F1 is back and I'm excited. Although, the race. Are we excited about the race? First of all, we're going to give it a score out of 10. After you, Lydia, me.
I'm giving it a 5.
I'm going to give it a 5 as well.
Really? I thought I was going to be way ahead of you.
It was purely average.
There was stuff going on.
There
wasn't a lot of drama.
There was a lot going on, but it wasn't racing.
Yeah.
Obviously, leading up to the race, we've had a lot of drama with Red Bull's Christian Horner, which we're not really going to comment on because nothing has been verified as of yet. We've seen it. Wish I hadn't. But we don't know if anything is true. We just don't know. We are not going to comment on it until it has been verified. But yeah, let's talk about, first of all, we'll do a few kind of introductory bits, and then we've got 3 big questions, and that is Yuki Tsunoda and Ferrari's Carlos Sainz and Charles Leclerc, what they went through, and then finally Mercedes. But let's start with Max Verstappen. He was so incredibly dominant this race. He finished 20 seconds ahead of everyone, including Sergio Perez, his Mexican teammate. And can they be caught? What does that mean going into the season?
I mean, right now, it's looking very similar to last year. I mean,
it's looking.
He made it look easy.
Worse than in the terms of like a competitive season. It doesn't look very promising, does it?
No, but it is a 24 race season. It's early days, and I also think that going into it, a lot of people had quite high expectations of, Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, even Aston Martin coming back and really putting pressure on Red Bull. But that was such a tall order. Like, really, was that realistically going to happen? I know a lot of people were thinking that with the developments they'd all made, that the gap would have been closed, which is not looking like the case. I mean, the fact that Max could maintain his lead throughout the whole race, have 2 free pit stops, and then still win by such a large margin was amazing.
It was an absolute masterclass, wasn't it?
Yeah.
By the whole team.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, from that point of view, it was amazing to watch and it was great. But a lot of people will feel a little disappointed that the other teams still are struggling. They're not quite finding the right setups. Like, I mean, Mercedes were having a whole host of issues, aka a broken seat. Which,
silly
what?
Things.
Yeah,
things that a team in F1 should not be.
Yeah,
it shouldn't even be a thought.
Yeah, so they were having issues, and I will discuss it more. And then Leclerc started P2, still finished P4, which to be fair is not that, it's commendable, bearing in mind he had really bad braking issues, constantly locking up. Yeah, I mean, it was all going on.
No, it was crazy. Sergio Perez, who started 5th, ended 2nd. I mean, we've been talking about, there's a lot of talk about Mercedes, and Hamilton especially has said, the car was tuned more for race pace over single lap qualifying pace. But look at what Red Bull are doing. They never tune their cars for qualifying. It's always a focus. The race pace is always a focus. I mean, what they've done, they've created such an incredible machine. And Max there's no denying it, he is one of the best drivers we've ever seen. He's up there with the likes of Ayrton Senna, Lewis Hamilton, Michael. He is so good. And the way he molds to this car and the way the two just drive, there's just symbiotic, the way they drive, the way the car and Verstappen drives. And it's incredible to see. But it does mean that there is no competition. And yes, before you say it, I know we've had eras of dominance throughout the whole of F1. Schumacher's dominance that got tiring. Hamilton's dominance, that got tiring. This does seem like it's an extra step, though. Like the dominance that Max is showing is ridiculous.
I mean, I was going to say the same thing. He's very clearly at one with the car. And I think for some drivers, that takes a little while to happen. They don't have that much pre-season testing. They don't have that much time in the car before the season starts. But he basically stepped in it and was just like, nice, okay, cool. Yeah. And just carried on. And then bearing in mind, they've brought the DRS, they enable it one lap earlier this year than they did last year.
Which I think worked well, actually.
Yes, however, there was a point during the first lap where I was like, he's already going to be a second ahead of Leclerc. Like, what is going on?
That's crazy.
He did bring it back temporarily, as in Leclerc. But that then, we know what happened after that. He just ran off with it. But I think what makes it more difficult for people to deal with, maybe the dominance, is that the whole point of bringing the cost cap in was to stop that happening. Mm-hmm. And it's now happened even more so than before, maybe. Some of Hamilton's, in his era of dominance with Mercedes, they still had really close calls. And also between the teammates, it was a lot closer sometimes.
Yeah, Sergio Perez has kind of letting the side down. I mean, I am only joking. He is obviously an incredible driver, and I know he struggles to actually pilot the RB19, now 20. But you're right, there is that lack of competition.
I do feel like he's come back with a bit of confidence this year, though.
Oh yeah, he drove his heart out today.
Yeah,
I thought it was great.
That is exactly what he needs to do to keep his position in the team for next year.
Totally. Now, Williams had a few issues. We'll get into the main stories in a moment, but Williams, let's just talk about them. They both had steering wheel issues. Now, if you didn't know, they changed the steering wheel coming into 2024 because they had a dash-mounted screen. Now it's a steering wheel-mounted screen, so they can actually see it while cornering. And I assume there was just this kind of syncing issue between the new steering wheel and the ECU of the car. They obviously bought their steering wheels from a Twitter ad. They didn't work. Shein. Wish. That might have gone better for them, actually. So Logan Sargent actually lost. He went off kind of at the beginning of the race. And it looked like he just got something wrong. But actually, the steering wheel, if you look closely, you can see the brake bias is changing on the steering wheel without him actually pressing anything. It goes from 39% to 95% front wheel brake bias. And then obviously it just screws up his race. He went to the back of the pack, understandably. And then Alex Albon also had issues. And then it was flashing up for the majority of the race. Car's too hot. It was cold in Bahrain. It was cold. I think a lot of teams didn't quite adjust their cooling. I think there was obviously a cooling issue. That also brings me to one of my big questions coming from the race generally. Before we get into the big stories, chasing cars, not the song, the racing of the chasing cars. DRS seemed to be a bit of an issue. Actually, following in another car's wake seemed to be an issue. Mm-hmm. It looks as though as these regulations have progressed, as it does all the time, following a car is now incredibly difficult. We've seen overheating issues. We've seen cars really struggling to overtake, even though they are in the DRS, within DRS timings. It's a bit of a worry. Does the FIA need to step in and make slight changes to the regulations? I think 2025 might be a year they need to do that. I know that the regulations are changing once again in 2026, but potentially. Aston Martin, they struggled, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, I think last year they were obviously one of the biggest surprises of the start of the season. But the race today, they kind of just got lost in it. Like, I was convinced, because when Fernando Alonso was being overtaken by multiple different people, he kind of just let it happen. You know, he's so good at defending. He doesn't let it go easy when he's really fighting for that position. And I was so excited when it was like, oh, Lewis Hamilton's going to be up against Fernando Alonso. And then it was still exciting, and it obviously then just happened. And then you think that just happened multiple times. So why was he just letting them pass? You think he's playing the long game, but then nothing happened towards the end of the race where he kind of, I don't know, he preserved his tyres more than they had or anything like that. They kind of just didn't really fight for it, it seemed like.
Yeah, I feel like Aston Martin's definitely not as fast as... I mean, it's difficult, isn't it? Because we've got the Red Bulls and then we've got a big clump of cars. And actually Ferrari, which we'll get into in a second, you've just been attacked by your microphone, haven't you? Ferrari, I think, are up there. But then there's McLaren, Mercedes, Aston Martin, and they're just kind of there. We're not quite sure. Like, you know, we've only seen one race. We don't know yet, really. But Aston Martin seemed a little slow. They didn't really seem like they were kind of in the race for a podium at all, which was surprising. Alonso obviously a lot further up than the son, Lance Stroll. So you know, it's something to look at for the next couple of races. If Aston Martin for one are actually struggling, or if it's just track specific. Or if they are struggling, if they can have the kind of a similar level of development we saw between 22 and 23. Yes, that's right. I'm losing my years. Hopefully the development doesn't kind of take a turn like it did last year, but we'll see. Let's get on to the first of the questions that we've got. The first of the main stories. Yep, I do this professionally. Let's talk about this right now. So, Yuki Tsunoda. God, he got angry. I mean,
he was not a happy boy.
We know he gets angry, but it really took a turn, and this will not reflect well on the future. So, what exactly happened?
So, I mean, bearing in mind this all happened towards the back of the pack, like they weren't fighting for points, but basically Yuki was within DRS zone of Kevin Magnussen. And he was fighting for that position, but then also behind him, Daniel Ricciardo was also within his DRS zone. The team then said, you need to let Daniel past, which, to be fair to Yuki, odd timing. You don't usually enforce team orders when, one, they're about to hopefully overtake someone, but also if you overtake in that moment, you then could lose the position. You know, it was quite backed up at that point.
Yeah. And there was Max Verstappen right behind them. Yeah,
I mean, it could have gone wrong. So I do completely get where Tsunoda was coming from.
And it's also worth noting that, like, throughout the whole race, Tsunoda had a poor race, not down to his own racing, but just how things had turned out. Bad pit, bad strategy. Yeah.
So he obviously complained. He was like, what did he say? Right now, are you kidding me? Which was probably...
no swearing. For now. And then, so he eventually let Daniel pass. You then think, well, you know, they obviously did that thinking that Daniel Ricciardo might take Kevin Magnussen, which he didn't. Then you think, oh, he'll give the space back by the end of the race. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't for points, but yeah, exactly. It's just nice, isn't it?
He did not. And then you think, okay, well, that's going to be an awkward situation after the race. But he didn't even wait to get back to the pits. Anything. It was the cool down lap. It was like, you know, on sim racing, when you see people like completely fly off for the dive bomb.
Yes.
So yeah, it was horrific.
It was bad. So yeah, it was the cool down lap after the race, turn 10. Yuki Tsunoda dives down the inside, all right, almost hitting Ricciardo, slams his brakes on, wheels lock up, and Ricciardo's like, what's going on? They're just continuing, like, down the straight. And Yuki, again, almost takes, like, another swipe where Daniel actually has to steer out of the way. And he says down the radio, what the F? Ricciardo said, what the F? I'll save it. He's an effing helmet.
I think
obviously he means he's incredibly safe to the point where metaphorically he's a helmet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's just
the thing is, you just can't Like, it's a high adrenaline situation. Emotions run high, which I think is why a lot of them can get away with having a bit of a go on the team radio and it kind of being brushed under the carpet.
Yeah, totally.
But you can't start doing that. Imagine if they crashed.
Yeah, I know.
That would have been so bad.
I know.
It does, although I kind of agree with why Yuki was upset, you can't be reacting like that. And I mean, it just does not reflect well on him at all.
Yeah. It is also worth saying, like, this isn't Daniel's fault. Like, these are team orders. And obviously, if you're told to go ahead, Daniel's going to take it. Like, it's going to look good for him. They're both potentially fighting for Red Bull seats this year. They're wanting to look as good as possible. Does this action from Yuki, does this almost immaturity reflect well on his potential Red Bull seat?
No.
No.
I think as well that, I mean, there will be frustrations from Tsunoda as an outsider looking in. I will just add that. But when they brought in Nick DeVries, there was kind of an expectation that he might take up the number one driver role, which that will have hurt. He obviously proved that wrong, but then they bring in Daniel Ricciardo. He's not going to want to come in as a second driver. So then again, he's kind of shifted down. He was a second driver with Pierre Gasly. Pierre leaves and he thinks he's got his moment and he hasn't. There's all this talk of Daniel Ricciardo coming back and then this being his opportunity to prove himself, to take that seat potentially if Perez doesn't keep it. He's kind of been left out of the mix and I think he's letting it get the better of him.
Yeah, and actually, watching Bahrain, I was thinking, wow, Tsunoda is out driving Ricciardo.
Yeah.
Like 10 to 1. Like,
But
there
then
was
he let
no
himself
doubt about
down.
it. Yeah, exactly. As a leader, you can't show that your emotions can get the better of you. You know, this is something a lot of new F1 drivers, like rookie F1 drivers, show. They get emotional and they get aggressive and trying to make a point. But Yuki's been doing this for a long time now. He's no longer a rookie. If he wants to show leadership potential, or not even leadership potential, but the potential to get into a leading team like Red Bull, he can't go dive bombing teammates when there's not even a race going on. It was a cool down lap, for goodness sake. Like, that's completely stupid. He needs to sort out his aggression. He needs to mature. He needs to go back after the race and talk to the team. You know, it's like a bad relationship, isn't it? All you need to do is communicate. You need to say, I don't feel this was right for this, and this reason. And they'll go, okay, good point. That is leadership skills, not almost crashing into someone. Stupid.
And I think we saw this with Verstappen as well. In his earlier years in F1, he was very emotional, very aggressive in his driving style. He obviously still is a little bit, but
when he needs to be.
Kind of hard when you're at the front of the pack by like a minute lead. But
no, that was Sargent at the back of the pack.
Oh, my apologies.
Yeah, right.
But he had to mature, and there may or may not have been conversations behind the scenes about that. But there was
There were conversations. There were definitely conversations.
There was a drastic shift where he had to suddenly mature, and now look where he is. But he's kind of holding himself back at this point. Like, you need to just mature and not let those situations get the better of you.
Definitely, yeah. If he wants to be seen as a potential for the Red Bull seat, and not just, like, it is just a B team, isn't it? Like, also, can we just say VCarb, we didn't need to worry about them at all, did we?
No, but also, you know, track specifics.
Yeah, but like Zach Brown can sit back down. Don't worry about it, mate. It's all good. Let's talk about Ferrari. You know, Ferrari has been. We kind of expected them to be good after testing. They were talking the big game, weren't they? Like, they were saying, and as well, Hamilton is moving to Ferrari, so there must be a reason. You know, they've probably said something to him like, "Don't worry about it. We've got this." You know. So, Sainz obviously had an amazing race. He was dive bombing everyone, but like really beautiful moves. Like, he raced like I've never seen him race before, actually. He thinks about what he's doing, and he's got this incredible maturity and the talent and the experience to make these moves and have them just, you know, they're beautifully clean, especially against Leclerc. Leclerc, however, did have a few issues. He had some brake issues, didn't he?
Yeah, so, I mean, he was locking up here, there, and everywhere. he was just having real issues throughout the whole race. I mean, at one point he said that he couldn't fight and it was too dangerous with the state that the car was. So he was having real problems. I mean, he started second, finished fourth, which I still don't think is... I think that's pretty good, considering the issues that he was having. But I know that he seemed pretty disappointed after the race, which you would be when you started on the front row.
Yeah, people were wondering if he had something actually. So, the brakes on these cars are carbon brakes, and that means that you can put a lot of stress through them without them really overheating. Obviously, overheating is still an issue, but compared to like the brakes you find on your daily, those are a completely different material. They overheat much faster. The carbon is great, but if the temperatures aren't quite within the right window for these carbon ceramic brakes, then they can go off. They can, they can be quite unstable. And people were saying that actually something might have got stuck in one of the brake cooling ducts. That's quite a difficult word to say this late in the evening after a full day. And that may have been what was causing this issue. It might have just been a brake issue generally, but he was finding that one side of the car, I think it was the right side of the car, was braking a lot stronger than the left at the front. So he was obviously really struggling, but I thought he did great. I thought the issue I'm finding is that the Ferrari has a great driver lineup.
Yeah, also I think going back to you saying about Carlos Sainz battling with Leclerc, that was actually one of my highlights. And I think that shows that they have a great driver lineup, that Ferrari are confident enough to just let them race.
Yes.
And it's so exciting to watch. It's slightly unnerving because you think, please keep it clean, otherwise you're just going to wipe out the both of you from the race. But it is so good to watch, and they clearly have the trust in the drivers that they're capable of, having exciting battles but keeping it clean and not damaging the whole race for the whole team. Also, with Leclerc, he obviously had all of these issues, but then he still made that overtake of George Russell. I think it was on the 47th lap, so fairly close to the end. George obviously was having some issues of his own, but Leclerc was really pushing the car as much as he possibly could, and that was a really good overtake as well.
Yeah, he really... I mean, for one, it shows the respect that the drivers have for each other.
Yeah.
Also, thank you, Fred Vasseur, for letting them race. It was beautiful to see on what would have been a pretty boring race if they hadn't have been able to do that. And yes, you're right, like Leclerc's racecraft, I think, again, like going back to the emotional side of racing and driving, I think Leclerc is more on the emotional side, and that's, a year or so ago he was making a few mistakes because he was getting quite riled up, but they have both become such incredible thinkers, and the way Leclerc nursed that car back, I thought they were going to retire it. This was earlier in the race. I thought, if this is like getting too dangerous, because he was saying it's really pulling to the right, if it's getting really dangerous, they might retire it. But no, they managed to do really well. Now, Sainz said this after the race. He was very happy. I felt really good out there today. The start wasn't great. From then on, I just managed the tyres well, and then I could do my race. I overtook 2 or 3 cars on the way to the podium, and keeping up with the Red Bull there was a pleasant surprise. Yeah, he was close to Sainz. I thought he was going to catch him. It's still not enough from where we want to be. Good start forward and solid start to the season. Leclerc, talking to Sky, he said, I can't go around corners. Sorry, he didn't say that. He said I couldn't go around corners 9 and 10 for a few laps. I was having crazy balance to the rears, lockups every lap, and I was making big changes. It's been a very frustrating race. I was waiting for this race for a long time. Wanted to show that we were capable of, and in the end we could not show anything on my side because we were completely out of place with brake balance, and the car in general wasn't where I wanted it to be. But still,
I think he's being slightly harsh on himself.
I think he's being really harsh on himself. I think he nursed the car back, and also I saw that people were kind of taking it out on Carlos Sainz for the fact that Leclerc didn't do very well. They both did great, and if Carlos Sainz made the right call to push forward.
Yeah, definitely.
He was racing his heart out.
They're a team, but they're also racing their own races.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, are Ferrari the second fastest car on the grid?
Judging right now, yes.
Yeah. I think so.
I think they tend to do very well in qualifying, but they still had very good race pace despite the issues. I think going back to qualifying as well, I mean, Leclerc was actually quite close to getting pole. If his Q2 time would have put him on pole, if he'd done that in Q3,
Yeah.
he just didn't. Which is a shame.
I think it's
not to really rub that in.
No, I think it's because the track was cooling down quite. Bahrain's crazy, and it's very cold in Bahrain right now.
Yeah.
The track was cooling down.
Yeah.
Which is why the times weren't quite matching.
I think they still have their issues that they need to sort out, but then so do Mercedes.
Aston Martin, apparently.
Aston Martin.
Yeah, McLaren didn't really seem
We're going
to
to
be.
talk about issues. Alpine are really not there.
Yeah, damn.
But yeah, right now they look like they're the second fastest. But again, it's a long old season. So
It is a long season. So
knows?
we're talking to them this coming Wednesday. I'm going to ask them about their development plans because, look, they have to develop faster than Red Bull. Red Bull has a big upgrade coming, apparently, around the Europe races, and it's supposed to be substantial. And if that substantial upgrade brings substantial performance, then Ferrari, like everyone else, is going to be lost. So it's all about the development war now. Hopefully they can learn from what they did this week. Like you said, you're completely right. It's early. So we can only hope that someone, and I think it will be Ferrari, takes the fight to Red Bull this coming this season. Now, this is a team that I don't really think will take the fight to Red Bull. Not for a long time anyway. Let's talk about Mercedes. They had a number of issues throughout the race. They had George complaining of engine overheating. Lewis had potential battery issues, but I think that was actually fine. It just looked like it was an issue. I think he'd had an aggressive lap where he'd run down the battery. And then his seat broke. Of all the things that could happen, his seat broke. I mean, you saw him after the race. He was... The thing is like, this is an intermediate year for him, isn't it? He's like, I don't care. I'm going to Ferrari next year. Like, look at how those guys are doing. But he said this after the race. He said, I personally feel great physically. I feel great. So winter training has worked. We probably feel a bit of disappointment within the team. I'm not sure about everyone else. I was definitely hoping that we would be better this weekend than we were. But it was a tough race. It was very close with everybody, and degradation is high with the car. There is plenty of areas we can improve. We were further back from the Red Bulls than we thought as well. Yeah, Bahrain is a high degradation track. Mercedes has kind of struggled with that. Ferrari's kind of struggled with that. It looks like they're sorted. He was asked about the car, about anything positive that he can take back to the team, and he said it was reliable, which isn't a great start. Actually, on that note,
quite important.
Fun fact, this is the first time every car has finished the opening race of a season.
Do we clap? Yay.
Well done, everybody. Also, another fun fact, this is the first time in 20 years a driver has had, first home run. Home run?
No, what's it called?
Pole led every lap, fastest lap. Max Verstappen. First time in 20 years. The last person was Michael Schumacher. Well done, Max Verstappen. Amazing racing. Anyway, let's get back onto Mercedes.
It's really annoying me that.
Yeah, what is that called? It's called a Grand Slam. That's what it's called, a Grand Slam. We're going to edit this in. This is after the editing in Grand Slam. Anyway, we won't keep you waiting, folks. I think it was a struggle in the car today, Hamilton says. The platform where I was given everything, but there wasn't a lot of performance then compared to some of the others. I think if I would have qualified better, I would be a couple of places ahead because of that. Because the last stint was good. It was about discovery today. I found out a lot of things about the car to improve, and I'm sure the team will. That is what we've got to remember, is that Mercedes, they've undergone a big transformation. They've got a completely new concept, to the point where they have moved the whole cockpit back. Like, it is new. And this is compared to Red Bull, who have, yes, their revolution has been huge over the 3 years, but they've remained within a similar idea of this aerodynamic concept. Mercedes are starting from the get-go, and we've said in previous podcasts, this is gonna be a struggle for them, because what they've got to do is learn their car. And it's not like teams are going, it's not like Red Bull, for example, are going in and be like, okay, we've added this, we've taken this away. We kind of know how it's going to react, though. This is what we need to do. And again, they've got all the information in the wind tunnel. They've got all that simulation data. Mercedes didn't even know at the beginning of this season if their wind tunnel data matched real life data. It's a big learning experience. So they can't hit the ground running. And we've seen that this week.
Yeah, although both George and Lewis seem quite positive after the race that it won't take much to sort the issues that they suffered from. So they still seem fairly positive, but then also it's the start of the season. They're not going to want to be publicly very negative about everything because, you want to keep people interested. But they do seem to think that it's, not an easy fix, but not the worst thing. Yeah,
I think what they're kind of relying on, what's pushing them forward, is the fact that it's a nice car to drive. Because, the cockpit's in the right place.
When it's not broken.
It's not broken. Yeah, exactly. It is at the moment, but it hopefully won't be. They have, they said it feels for the first time like a race car.
Yeah.
And I was reading that quote thinking, wow, they really didn't like the W14, did they? They were like, when you turn right, it turns right. I was like, it didn't turn right before? Are you kidding me? They're like, when you accelerate, it accelerates. What? What? What was this car doing?
Maybe that's why they feel so positive, because still it is miles better than what they've been dealing with for the past 2 years. So.
Exactly, yeah. And now they can just add to it. So once they understand the building blocks, they can now add the towers and all the fun bits on top of that. I think it's going to be a really exciting season. Don't you?
I do. I'm still feeling positive. I think you've got to remember that there are a lot of different tracks. They're not all going to perform the same as they do in Bahrain. It's been a long old day.
Yeah, it has been a long day.
We've got some street circuits which are always different and exciting. I think it's going to be a great season.
I think so too. I think things are evening out. We've seen the time, we've seen the qualifying times. They were incredibly close. And I know Max Verstappen ran away with it. And you go on to X, formerly Twitter, and it is like the big complaint. Oh, Max is still 20 seconds ahead. Yes, it's something we're getting quite used to now. But things are moving in the right direction. And like you said, this is the longest season in the history of the sport. Things may well change.
Yeah, also, Perez seems to, I say this, it's been one race. How can I even analyse that? But this is his opportunity to save his seat for next year. So we may see more of a fight between the two Red Bull drivers.
Yeah, exactly.
Never know.
I don't think so. But
I said more of a fight.
No, but we don't know. We don't know. I'm guessing as well.
A fight. I said more of.
So, okay. First race down. Second race coming up. It's another Saturday race. Saudi Arabia, one of my favourite tracks. It's a street track. Maybe Perez, the Perez charm, he might bring it home. He might bring it home. We might see a fight with Max Verstappen. Verstappen looked bored by the end of this race. He did. He said it was simply lovely.
Also, they were in the cool-down room, and it was like they'd had just like a Sunday. I look more tired after a roast.
It's unbelievable, isn't it?
They were just chilling.
These guys they're pulling 4Gs in the corners, and they're just there like, yeah. And then I went left. I steered left, and it went left. And and you're just like, really? You're like, oh my god. I'm so jealous of these guys. All these guys are absolute superheroes. I'm excited for 2024. It's going to be a great season. Let us know down in the comments, who do you think is going to win the season? And why is it Max Verstappen? Longest season. I'm joking. It might not be. We never know. Let us know down in the comments. While you're down there, like the video, subscribe, and if you want to know as soon as we've uploaded a video, what do they need to do?
Click the notification bell.
Yeah, please do. Please do. It's always a pleasure doing this. We love it. We are tired, but we love it. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.